Okay, here we go.
Good deal.
Good morning, everyone. I am Val Meyers, and we are here this morning to talk a little bit about fetal alcohol syndrome and those related with it, those disabilities related with it. I am Val Meyers. I am the mental health counselor and owner of the Kids Therapy Center here in Bismarck, North Dakota. And I have my good friend and experienced parent, Carl Young, with us. Carl, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Carl Young. I am the executive director of the Family Services Network, and we provide supports for families of kids that are born with fetal alcohol or neonatal substance-exposed newborn kind of thing. So we do that because we've lived with a child that has fetal alcohol for 18 years. Yeah, yes. That's about it.
Great. So we did this talk today because have been reached out by a few parents who are raising children that are on the fetal alcohol spectrum. And during this time, it has been really hard for them especially. And it has been a lot hard, I would say, for a variety of parents raising children on with a disability. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about what is fetal alcohol, what are some things parents can do, and then open it up for questions and answers. So this will be a brief talk, but we want to get the education out there for families. All right, Carl, do you want to start?
Where to start? The earlier you can get a diagnosis of fetal alcohol, the better. Fetal alcohol, of course, talks about or references a child that is born with alcohol in their system or whose mother has had alcohol while she was pregnant. There's even some studies now that show that a father having alcohol right before insemination can affect the baby too. So, but the big one is the first trimester of mom being pregnant and having alcohol, because that's when the bulk of the early brain development occurs, and that's when the most damage occurs to the baby. It is a developmental disability that is entirely preventable. That said, if mom has drinks and the child ends up with fetal alcohol, we as an organization, Family Services Network, do not shame mom for that, because oftentimes mom doesn't know she's pregnant when she's drinking in those early months. So, but yeah, so the things to do, supports, long-term supports. You need support for your family. The child will exhibit behaviors that can stress any clinician, let alone any family. So there are so many other areas to talk about. So school, home life, therapeutic life. If you have to go to residential care with the child, that's a whole nother game. So.
Yes, correct. You know, as a clinician that works with the families with fetal alcohol, you know, I think of one of the biggest educational pieces that I like to tell families is to remember this is not behavioral.
Mm-hmm. And it's not personal. The child doesn't go on the attack or anything like that, or exhibit behaviors because they want to purposely hurt you.
Right.
It's their way of surviving. It's their body's way of telling them how to live.
Right. Yeah, you know, that when I think that it's easy for families to think this is behavioral, they're doing it to be mean to me, you know, but that's not how you can look at it. You have to look at it as a symptom. Yes. And when you start to look at it as a symptom, then you can recognize a little bit better that you're not at fault for this, and they are not either. The other advice I give to people is you start to see more symptoms or acting out or behavior type symptoms, that we need to look at how we can get the body to regulate a little bit better so that they can function better. So some of the families that have reached out to me over the last week with all of this going on is that they're seeing a high increase of anxiety and aggression and dysregulation, because these children don't typically, or adults don't typically, know how to regulate themselves very well.
Right.
Carl, do you have advice for parents on how to take care of themselves when working with a child?
It's harder for single family homes or single parent homes. The number one thing is to make sure that you get some kind of a respite, because you need a break, no matter how brief, from the child, and the child needs a break from you, because you're going to try to control the child's behaviors, and over time you will learn that that's just not a possibility. It's difficult. My wife and I are lucky. We've been together almost 26 years. And we have taken the team approach to parenting our son. So we're both on the same page, and we don't disagree with each other in front of our son, because we've learned over time that he will use that against us. Not so much against us as a method of trying to manipulate the situation to get what he wants or what he needs or what he thinks he needs, or otherwise control every aspect of life. Yeah, and that's a survival mechanism for him, as odd as that sounds. It's not something he learned. It's almost something that he was born with. He does not feel remorse. He doesn't show empathy. And if he does cry, it's a learned response more than it is a natural response. If like, for example, my stepdad passed away, and for our son, it was just another day. He cried because everybody else was crying, not because he was feeling sadness about his step-grandfather passing away. So, and it can be difficult. We've seen him throw furniture, a 6-foot round table clear across the room when he's been upset. And that's a rage that comes inherently with the disorder, unfortunately. Not every child will have that rage, but there are a lot of those children with fetal alcohol who do have that rage. And it can be very scary for teachers. It can be very scary for families. So there are so many aspects. But the number one thing I'd say is, some kind of a respite where you can get away for a little bit and take a break from the child is very important.
Yes, I agree with that. Having some respite time is very important for the families, and having some time with somebody to process all of this.
Yes.
When we look at fetal alcohol treatment, first, say, in a clinical setting, as a counselor, we can't change a lot of things. Most of it is parent support and education.
Yes, teaching the parent how to work within the abilities of the child, because if you approach it as a disability all the time, you're going to see it as a negative. And there are so many positives about fetal alcohol. I'm not saying it's something I would want any child to have, but it's not all negative either. So, yeah.
Right. So one of the other skills that I give parents is, when looking at these symptoms, sometimes our symptoms might build up, or the stress of the body might build up. And so be looking at, where is that stress at, and how can we bring it down? So during these times, I'm telling parents that, you can have as routine as good as you can, but to also hit all the different sensory pieces. So, large motor, fine motor, small, or, doing things that are exercise and things that are calming, and things to use with the brain. Another big support that I let families know about is using nutrition or supplementation as well.
Yes.
Omegas help the brain, B vitamins can help the body, pycnogenol can help the body, and whatnot. What do you think, Carl, has been the biggest help for your family, with your son, or with you and your wife, during the years that you had, years of raising him?
Diet stability. because he would eat everything in the house if he had the opportunity to do so. And he was the type that would hoard food. If you bought a special treat for after dinner, that treat would disappear before anybody had a chance to eat it. And then we'd find all the wrappers and stuff in his room. So once we put locks on all of the cabinets in the kitchen, and that sounds harsh, but once we put locks on all of the cabinets, padlocks with a key, we were able to control his diet a little bit better, and that made all the difference in the world. Because he's not eating just processed sugar or processed foods with a lot of unnecessary additives and things of that nature. So all of those things are not at all, while they're good for maintaining food long-term shelf life, they're not good for the human body. So, and it's very observable in a child with fetal alcohol. So yeah, once you can control every aspect of their diet and get their nutrition where it needs to be, then things will improve. And one of the things that we did with our son was something called a gene snip. So, and that showed us what he should eat, what he shouldn't eat, and things of that nature. So
awesome. Yeah. When looking back at your son's life and in your guys' care, what do you think is the one piece of advice you would like to give families that are also raising children with fetal alcohol?
The first diagnosis that you'll get for your child, as I'm sure, well, if you know your child has fetal alcohol, then you know this. The first diagnosis you got was probably wrong. Like our son was diagnosed with everything from autism to obsessive compulsive disorder to oppositional defiant disorder to childhood conduct disorder and budding sociopath and budding psychopath and all of these other things. And your child can't be given a diagnosis of sociopathic behaviors or psychopathic behaviors before the age of 18. That's just the way it is. Because fetal alcohol is a developmental disability, they should qualify for developmental disability services. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in most cases, the kids' IQs are too high for the state standards to qualify. We're working to change that, but it's going to take time to do that. I forgot the question and started rambling. I'm sorry. The number one thing, though, to do is to not give up hope. Because if you give up hope, your child will sense that, and things will get worse of magnitudes. So, yeah, I don't know how else to put that. So
yeah, and as I see families enter the teenage years and into that young adulthood, and I have to tell families that it's about safety now. Mm-hmm. I think that is really hard because, as you know, I have hope for everybody, mm-hmm. But I also want everybody to be safe.
Right. And that was the hardest part for us, how could we keep, because we have 5 kids total, plus our pets, and how do you keep everybody safe while still supporting the child that has the disability? And with mm-hmm. these children, it's very difficult because by and large, nobody has any idea how to support them. So most parents are flying by the seat of their pants trying to figure it out. And that's unfortunate because families, such as ours are losing out long term because here we are, he's 18 and finally getting the services he needs, or he has the services he needs on the radar, so he'll get them in the next little bit here. But it took us this long to get what he needed. And if he'd had it when he was 2 or 3 and had it his whole life, everything about his life would be different. We wouldn't have had to deal with him being homeless for a period. He wouldn't have to deal with having spent time in jail for things that he did because he has no impulse control. It's just not there. It's part of his brain issues. So, but there are so many aspects of the last year of his life that wouldn't have happened if he'd had disability services from the beginning.
And I think that's one of the hardest parts that I see with families is not understanding, again, this is a disability and not behavioral. So when they get to this age, the first thing a lot of families do is they want to put them in services for criminal behaviors,
Right.
you know, and this is not a criminal behavior. You know, my rule of thumb is that we can maybe teach them something and put it to memory. But like you said, they have poor impulse control. So it has to go to memory. So which is what, 24 to 30 times of teaching or learning before it goes to memory.
And even then, it might be there today, but it might not be there tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. And to think, though, that they have to be arrested 24 times or whatnot before they start to learn it.
Yes.
And that's what's really hard with families is at first I see families want to go through that stage of pressing charges or having them arrested or whatnot. And sometimes we need to do that so they get into services.
Right. And that's how we started to access services is we press charges. When he would go on the attack for, like, he had attacked me, and I would separate him from the rest of the family. So it was just him and I going through that miniature battle, for lack of any other term that would work. You know, and the family would lock themselves in the house, and then my son and I would be outside. They would be calling the police because they were afraid of my safety. And ultimately, we ended up going through the legal system to get most of the support that we did get through his juvenile and teen years. So,
yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, so I would say, you know, let's just end here on a little tidbit of something positive about these individuals is that I do have hope for them. I do see some, remember there's a spectrum of these, so some are more severe than others.
It's like autism.
Yes.
In that way.
Yeah.
You know, something positive, and I see so many positive things in our son that outweigh, in my mind anyway, the negatives. I can't be around him right now because of the virus, and I have an autoimmune disorder. And so far, he's been respectful of that. But there are so many positives. His unbounded energy, his inquisitiveness, his desire to always look at learning new things. And people will find it creepy because he'll provoke a response in somebody and use that as a way to teach himself how to respond to somebody else's emotions. Which is weird, but it's also showing a level of understanding of his own disorder that not many people can see. So,
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Carl, for this talk today. I hope that families, please reach out to us. Please ask questions in the comments.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, we would be happy to do this as often as necessary to help educate people, because the more we can educate people, the more we can help parents, the more we can get the system to change to better support kids that are born substance exposed.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you. I'm Val Meyers with Kids Therapy Center in Bismarck, North Dakota, with my friend and experienced parent, Carla Young. I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you.